back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for all right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth, and it's great to have you guys here on this Monday, April 29th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is gsmcpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. And as always, is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So with that being said, let's get into what we are going to talk about for today. So we're going to talk about the 49ers. We're going to talk about John Lynch addressing trade rumors, not just with Brandon Aiyuk, but also with Deebo Samuel. So I'll talk about that. Also, what the 49ers did collectively with their draft. Then in the second part of the show, I'll talk about the Falcons, more on them selecting Michael Penix Jr. with their first pick. So I'll get into that and talk about also the other moves that they made during the draft as well. Then I'll get into the Chargers, talking about their draft, some of the things that they did there. And then in the final part of the show, I will talk about Roger Goodell talking about an 18-game season and extending it so when it's the Super Bowl, most people will have off the next day. So we'll get into all that we'll get into that in the final part of the show. But first off, I just want to apologize. On Friday, for some reason, I guess my internet was acting up, so the stream kept cutting in and out during it. Now, the whole show is posted on, wherever you get your podcasts, as well as up on both YouTube channels, just broken down into the 4 segments. So I was still able to do the whole show, but at least with the stream portion, because if you go to the channel, or one of the YouTube channels, and you go to the live part, there isn't a show from Friday listed there because the whole live part just got screwed up because of that. But again, it had internet. It was something to do with internet. But the whole show is posted. So if you go back to Friday's date and you go under, the regular videos tab, you'll see the 4 segments are right there if you want to watch them. Or the whole show is on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, and you can listen to the whole thing. So, but yeah, for the live portion, it was just, it was bad. There was a lot of like 3-second clips. It was a disaster. It was, but hopefully, things go smoothly today. There was some issues I was having before I came on. For some reason on my Google Chrome, I had to sign back into it, and that's where, I could easily just access the YouTube accounts and where I have all my show notes, and for some reason it logged me out, and I was having issues logging back into it. So got to try to figure that out. But we're here, we're doing the show, and it's going a lot better than it did on Friday, because I don't see anything popping up saying that there's issues, internet issues. So we're doing good. We're doing good. So as long as I'm doing the show right now, that's all that matters. So. Apologize for going off on a tangent there, but that's what these last couple days doing the show, that's what's been going on behind the scenes, or in front of the camera. But and then by the way, when I was done doing the show, my camera, of course, turned off, so that ended off the show on a high note. But anyways, but I hope everybody had a good weekend. All right, let's now get into the 49ers stuff and stop listening to me ranting over here. So the 49ers, some interesting things that I saw. So First off, John Lynch, he talked about how they didn't entertain any trade offers for not just Brandon Aiyuk but Deebo Samuel day 2 of the NFL draft. There were no trades, no big. I mean, there were trades throughout the draft, but just to move up or down, not players from teams moving, like AJ Brown, for example, getting moved, or Marquise Brown getting moved, for example. We didn't see any of that, and the 49ers didn't have interest in doing that. Now, it's possible that the 49ers could ultimately end up trading one of their wide receivers, but that wide receiver might not be Brandon Aiyuk. It might be Deebo Samuel, because I did see that the 49ers would feel more inclined to trade him as opposed to Brandon Aiyuk. There's some rumors out there that that's possible. ESPN's Dan Graziano indicated that there's a preference to trade Samuel because of his contract situation as cap hit. He's scheduled to earn nearly $21 million in salary and counting more than $28.6 million against the team's salary cap in 2024. Now, the 49ers, they did draft a wide receiver. And when they did that, a lot of people are like, oh, well, that means Brandon Aiyuk is the one that is going to be ultimately let go or traded. So it was Ricky Pearsall. Now he's out of Florida. This is who they drafted on night 1 of the draft. So that could mean one of their wide receivers could be on the move, and I want to actually look into his stats. If I could pull them up here. So with Florida, again, I got to go back to because now that he's in the NFL, I got to switch back to the stats. So yeah, Florida the last 2 years, 33 receptions, 661 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns in 2022. Then in 2023, numbers increased: 65 receptions, 965 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And I know from what I was reading, he's kind of got that similar skill set with Deebo Samuel, where they could line him up in the backfield like they do with Deebo Samuel, and they could do a lot of different things with him. So that could mean maybe Deebo Samuel is the wide receiver that's on the move, which would definitely be really interesting if that ends up happening. Because Brandon Aiyuk, I mean, they could do end arounds with Brandon Aiyuk, but they typically, he's not a guy that they have lining up in the backfield like they do with Deebo. They do a lot of different things with Deebo Samuel. Brandon Aiyuk is, the guy that's, going to go out there, go deep, catch that ball like he did in the NFC Championship game. Deebo Samuel is more of that gadget player. Not really necessarily that deep ball guy, but again, very talented wide receiver. Just different skill sets when you're comparing the 2 wide receivers. Brandon Aiyuk's the receiver that's going to go deep. Although Deebo Samuel has caught in some deep passes on the run, but Brandon Aiyuk's the one that's going to take the top off the defense. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. But for the moment, the 49ers, they didn't move off of any of their receivers on this past weekend, and I wanted to read what he said. So he said, we didn't entertain any of that today. We're happy with our wide receiver group. Actually, more than happy. We're really thrilled. We're really thrilled with it, and thrilled to have added Ricky to that group, and even make it stronger. Let's see if he said anything else. Never close the door on a trade. I mean, we're always listening, and we have, but we like our group as it stands. I thought it was. Oh, and this is what Kyle Shanahan said. I thought it was unlikely going into it, but that doesn't mean that it can't happen. So, I mean, you listen to everything. So, I guess the door is not completely closed on the possibility of them trading one of their wide receivers, but it's definitely going to be something to keep an eye on. And I just wanted to run through what the 49ers did, all their selections. So they took Pearsall with the first pick from Florida. Then in round 2, they took Renardo Green, a cornerback from Florida State. They took an offensive lineman, Dominic Puny, from Kansas. Again, hopefully I pronounce all these names correctly. 4th round, they took Malik Mustafa from Wake Forest, to safety. Then round 4, they took a running back, Isaac Guarendo. Then they took another wide receiver from Arizona, Jacob Cowing. Then they took another offensive lineman in the 6th round, Jared Kingston. And in the last round, they took in the 7th round, they took a linebacker from Florida State, Tatum Bethune. Again, hopefully that's how I pronounce some of these names. But listen, if they become stars, and I actually look into the right pronunciation for some of these names, then I'll get the names right. But I that's what they ended up doing. So they actually did take a running back. So I didn't know that. Again, got to go back and look at what some of these teams did, because again, we'll try to cover all of them throughout the coming weeks, because I know there's just so many teams. I'm not going to cover every single one in one show. But there's a few things that I do want to talk about with some, because I know the Jets, they took the quarterback from Florida State, Jordan Travis. They took him, I think it was in the 5th round. So I do want to talk about that at some point this week. Also, this happened when I woke up, so I'll talk about it tomorrow. But the Cowboys did sign Ezekiel Elliott, so to a 1-year contract. So I'll talk about that tomorrow as well. Again, because I already had everything set up for what I was going to discuss today. So I'm just going to stick to what I had, and then we'll get into it tomorrow. Yeah, not a life-changing move that the Cowboys made, but I'll get into that and also their draft as well. And, so tomorrow I'll touch upon the Jets and the Cowboys, 2 teams that I've talked about a lot recently. But for the moment here, we're sticking to what we had planned for the day. So, but that's what back to the 49ers, that's what they did. A couple of additions in the secondary, which I think was important, because I think when we look at the 49ers, their front seven's incredible, but the secondary is something that is a little bit lacking. You want to add to that. I know, like Ufanga, he got hurt last year, so getting him back, hopefully healthy, that's big. But that's something that they and also Ward, their corner as well, or Charvarius Ward. They have to add to that. That's what you would say is probably one of their weaknesses is their secondary. But also their run defense was a little suspect in the playoffs. But and losing Eric Armstead is big, So, but their defense is going to be good next year. That's always a strength. But the other thing too is, Dre Greenlaw getting hurt in the Super Bowl. Going into next year, I don't know if he's going to be ready for week 1. So, that could be a big loss for them early on. Well, it is a big loss for them because, I think he's probably going to end up missing some time. But we'll see. Hopefully he, misses a few games, but he at most, and then he's able to come back. But yeah, I forgot about that injury. That was a horrible injury, especially in that game too. And seeing Fred Warner's reaction. Yeah, so. But the 49ers defense, I expect, to continue to be one of the best defenses in the NFL. But yeah, with them drafting a couple wide receivers, that, we'll see if they end up trading one of these guys, and maybe it's Deebo Samuel, because all we've been focusing on is Brandon Aiyuk, but could be Deebo Samuel that ends up being traded. And we'll have to keep an eye on it. But for the moment, both of these guys are staying put. And, again, we'll see what the 49ers end up doing as we move right along here. Because now with the draft being over, now we focus on... Well, there's still some free agents out there. But now we focus on the schedule coming out, because that's going to be coming out within a couple weeks. Sometime in May. And once it does, then we'll look at each schedule. We'll talk about the matchups and, what time each game is at. I'm looking forward to that. That's one of the best times of the year is when the schedule comes out. So, but yeah, so let me know what you guys think about the trade rumors surrounding the 49ers. who is more likely to get traded, Brandon Aiyuk or Deebo Samuel? What do you think is going to happen? Do you think none of them will get traded and they'll be able to keep all of them? Again, 49ers got a tough decision on their hands if they have to move one of these guys. I mean, you can't move both of them. I mean, if you move both of them, then that's a problem. But that's not going to happen. But it's possible that at least one of these guys could end up being traded. And yeah, I mean, that would definitely hurt Brock Purdy because, with the supporting cast he has around him, I mean, look at what he's able to do. I mean, losing one of those pieces, yeah, and there's going to be some growing pains with some of these younger guys that they ended up drafting. So, again, something else to keep an eye on, and see if anything ultimately ends up happening. So with that, we're going to end up taking our first break of the show. When we come back, we are going to discuss more on the Michael Penix. The Falcons drafting Michael Penix. That's what I meant to say. We're going to talk about that. He had a conversation with Kirk Cousins, so we'll get into that. Also, what the Falcons had to say on drafting Penix. What was their reasoning for that? So we'll get into all that when we come back from our first break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit. A stupid myth, you choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are going to talk about the Falcons, more on the Michael Penix draft pick. I wanted to bring up a couple things. What he had to say, because he had a conversation with Kirk Cousins, so I wanted to talk about that, as well as what the Falcons said on their reasoning for drafting Penix at 8. I think last week I said 7. I meant to say 8. But this is what Michael Penix had to say at his introductory press conference. So he said that him and Cousins had a very good conversation. This is what he said. I'm going to keep it just between me and him right now. It was definitely a good conversation. I'm super excited to work with him. He said he's the same with me. So that's what he had to say on Cousins. I thought he said something else, but yeah, this is what we got, at least in the article that I have here. But I don't know. I mean, I know it caught Kirk Cousins by surprise, and this kind of created a little bit of it did create an outrage. Well, Falcons fans weren't too thrilled with the pick, but you had people saying, "Oh, like why didn't they tell Kirk Cousins about this? Like why did they blindside him like this?" And then you have on the other side, well, he's getting paid $180 million, $100 million guaranteed. He shouldn't feel bad. Now I kind of agree with that side, but also. It's a little bit of both. Like, maybe the Falcons should have reached out to him prior to making this pick. I guess, well, not on draft night, but maybe like before the draft. You say, hey, we're thinking about this. What are your thoughts on that? Because this is kind of what the Packers did to Aaron Rodgers back when they took Jordan Love. Don't you want to be transparent with your players and say, hey, this is what I think we're going to do with this pick? Just wanted to let you know. Now, I don't think Kirk Cousins is going to give him the cold shoulder. And Aaron Rodgers didn't give Jordan Love the cold shoulder either. Because at the end of the day, it's not the players specifically. Look, it's the organization. The organization decided to make this move. It's not Michael Penix or Jordan Love that they got drafted by, their respective teams. That's just what happened. So, yeah, I think Kirk Cousins, although he's going to be focused on, hey, I'm the starting quarterback, so, like, my job is now to go out there and win games. Like, now you're going to have this other, I mean, he doesn't have to embrace a mentor role. He doesn't have to take on that responsibility. But I do think that there's going to be some mentoring. I think Cousins will, bring Michael Penix along because the Falcons believe that Michael Penix Jr. is the future of this team. And listen, they're going to ride out Kirk Cousins' contract the whole way through, hopefully. And then hopefully it's a smooth transition and Penix takes over. And I understand their reasoning because they did bring it up. They said, look, this is a quarterback that we liked and this is our future. We want to be able to have our future quarterback in our hands. But it's just like where he was taken, and especially with the expectations of this team going into next year, and you want to, make moves that are going to help your team now as opposed to, your future. Because this team right now, they have a great chance to win the division. Again, I like the Buccaneers to win the division because I'm a Baker fan, but right now, I'd probably lean more towards the Falcons as the team to win the division with a healthy Kirk Cousins. And the biggest need for this team going into the draft was edge rusher. And you look at a lot of the mock drafts, everybody had them taking an edge rusher. Now, again, this is why mock drafts don't mean anything, because teams could do things that you just don't expect. And this was one of those things. The Falcons took Michael Penix with their first pick. So, now this is what General Manager Terry Fontenot had to say about the pick. He said, this wasn't us forcing something. This was just, we have a lot of belief in the player. We know he could be a future franchise player. That's why we made the decision to do that right now. And this is also what Raheem Morris had to say about Penix learning under Kirk Cousins. He's a great guy he can model his game after. He's a great guy he can model his process after. He's a great guy that he can model everything after. Kirk Cousins is absolutely phenomenal from when he came into the league to now. Penix is in a position that he can just follow and do the right things within our building, do the right things within the structure of learning the offense, and put himself in a position to go out there and try to be the best version of himself. That's all he needs to do, just be the best version of himself. And Penix said, I'm just here to do whatever I can to help this team win football games. That's the biggest thing for me. I love winning, and I'm a team guy. That's what I'm going to be in the locker room. Kirk, he's an amazing guy. I actually watched the quarterback series, something I also need to do with him. Watch the entirety of it. Quarterback series with him, and seeing that he's a man of faith just like me. He's all about his family, so I really enjoy that to kind of get a feel of what kind of guy he is. I'm super blessed to be able to be in a room with him and be able to work with him and learn from him and support him as he continues his career. So, yeah, again, I understand it. It's just, again, it's where you decided to take him. Because, again, Michael Penix, like early on when we were leading up to the draft, I was like, oh, he could be a guy that's taken in the second round. But then all of a sudden, he really flew up those draft boards, and he ended up getting taken number 8 overall, even before J.J. McCarthy, which was a shock. Again, the way it was portrayed in the media. You thought it was going to be Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and then J.J. McCarthy. That was not the case. It was the first 3 that I just said, and then it was Michael Penix, and then it was J.J. McCarthy. But yeah, so what Fontenot also said, he said Penix could potentially sit for 4 or 5 years, before he ends up taking over as the starter. Because right now, Kirk Cousins' contract is a 4-year contract. Now, I don't know how these 4 years are going to play out. He's 36 years old. He's coming off the Achilles injury. And, I think he's going to be fine. Although I say that very I do have my concerns, but I feel like he'll be able to bounce back. But 4 or 5 years is a long time. Michael Penix is going to be 28, 29 years old. He's going to be almost 30 by the time this contract is up. And, people have their concerns over Michael Penix as well because, he has an injury history too. So you go from one quarterback that just came off of a significant injury, and then you transition into another one. Well, again, hopefully we're years removed from this, and Kirk Cousins is playing well. But then you're going to put your faith in a quarterback that has dealt with a lot of injuries, in his career. Now, again, played well last year, got his team to the national championship game against Michigan. The talent's there. So, maybe it all pans out and he goes out there and he has a good career and he doesn't get hurt, doesn't deal with any significant injuries. And I don't hope that, and I don't want that happening for anybody because, again, I've said how much I dislike injuries and pretty much everybody does not like injuries. It's just, but it's a part of the game, and like I said, Falcons are kind of taking a bit of a gamble, taking Penix, but it could pan out. There's upside to that. And if you have him not start right away, him learn from Kirk Cousins, that's only going to help his growth. So that way, you don't just throw him in there when he's clearly not ready. So, again, I do like that strategy. It's just, again, where they ended up taking him. Because, again, they had other needs. And this is a team that could be competitive right now. Now, I don't see this team going far in the playoffs. But I think at least the favorites to win the division right now, I would say. Kind of just want to run through their some of their other selections as well, and we'll go through that. So they did end up taking a defensive lineman out of Oregon. They took Brandon Dorles. Again, pronunciation, apologize. Dorles, I think that's how you pronounce it, from Oregon. So they did address the defensive line. Then they took another edge rusher, Braylon Trice, from Washington. In the second round, because I was looking at an article on Yahoo, because he talked about his favorite pick was Dorles, but their second pick was Rook Oro from Clemson, a defensive lineman. So they did go, so they pretty much went all defense with their next 4 picks. Then they went with J.D. Bertrand from Notre Dame, a linebacker. They also took a defensive lineman with their last pick, Zion Logue. And then they took another receiver and a running back. They took Jace McClellan from Alabama and Casey Washington from Illinois, wide receiver. So, they took Penix with their first pick, but then they went all defense after that. So, up until the 6th round. So we'll see how impactful those picks are. So, at least the Falcons, they addressed their needs after they made this selection. But, again, we'll see how this all plays out. But for right now, you're hoping as a Falcons fan that Kirk Cousins goes out there and he has a really good year. And he could bring Michael Penix along at the same time. So then ultimately when the torch does end up getting passed, Michael Penix Jr. is ready. And, he ends up being the Falcons' franchise quarterback once Kirk Cousins eventually, leaves. Or I guess this is going to be, it for him once this contract is up and he retires. But we'll have to see. So, but let me know what you guys think about the Falcons. How do you see their season playing out? What were your initial thoughts on the Michael Penix draft selection? Let me know in the comments. So before we go to break, I just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is gsmcpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So when we come back from our second break of the show, we'll talk about the Chargers and what they did during their draft. Talk about some of their selections. Yeah, that'll be the third part of the show. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we are going to talk about the Chargers draft. What did they do? How did they address their needs? Because they did take, now going into the draft, they did take a trio of wide receivers. Receiver was a position that they needed because their receiver depth chart was thin. You know, you had Joshua Palmer, Quinn Johnson, and also Darius Davis. At least that was from the last time I checked. But top two wide receivers were Quinn Johnson and Joshua Palmer. So they did end up drafting a trio of wide receivers. Well, the first night they did take Joe Alt from Notre Dame. And a lot of people thought they were going to end up taking Malik Neighbors or Roma Dunze or a receiver at that pick. Most people thought. I thought they would do that unless they decided to trade down. But no, that was not the case. They took Joe Alt. So you got him on one side. You're going to have Rashawn Slater on the other, which I think that's great. I agree with Jim Harbaugh when he says that, you know, offensive linemen are weapons too. Now, he's using it in a different context, but I agree with him because you want to be able to protect your franchise guy in Justin Herbert. Now, at the same time, you also want to have guys that he can throw to, and that's what they ended up doing. So they took Ladd McConkey from Georgia. They took him in the second round. They also took Jerry Rice's son. They took Brendan Rice from USC. And then, this was in the 7th round. And then with their final selection, another 7th round pick, they took Cornelius Johnson from Michigan as well. And, you know, Jim Harbaugh knows him very well. So they did that. So they added a trio of wide receivers. Now, I kind of wanted to go through their stats as well. So we'll look at McConkey's stats first with Georgia. So in 2021, 447 yards, 31 receptions, 5 touchdowns. 2022, 58 receptions, 762 yards receiving, and 7 touchdowns. And then 30 receptions for 478 yards and 2 touchdowns in 2023. Also had some rushing touchdowns as well. But yeah, so that's what they did with their second round pick. 6-foot wide receiver, 185 pounds. And all right, so that was the one receiver that they added. So now we'll look at Brendan Rice's stats as well from USC. playing with Caleb Williams. So, so he was taken in the 7th round, like I said. And, so he was with Colorado for a couple of years. But the numbers increased when he got to USC. 2022, 39 receptions for 611 yards and 4 touchdowns. And then in 2023, now again, again, a lot of these guys I'm not familiar with, but had a pretty good year. 45 receptions. That'd be crazy if he had 45 touchdowns. But yeah, 45 receptions, 791 yards receiving, 12 touchdowns. So that's impressive. And then we'll take a look at Cornelius Johnson's stats as well with Michigan. So with Michigan, and then of course it says this webpage was loaded because there was a problem. Of course there was. Okay, there we go. So he's 6'3", 208 pounds. He spent his entire collegiate career with Michigan. So he had 6 touchdowns in 2022. He only had 1 in 2023, but he had 604 receiving yards on 47 receptions. So had a career high in college in receptions, and he had 627 receptions or 627 receiving yards back in 2021, but he had 604 in 2023. So yeah, the Chargers addressed the wide receiver position. They addressed the offensive line. They also took another Michigan player. They took Junior Colson, a linebacker, Justin Boygby from Alabama, defensive lineman. Again, the pronunciation. They took a couple of corners. They took Tareeb Still from Maryland and Cam Hart from Notre Dame. They took another running back. They took Kamani Vidal from Troy. So that's what the Chargers did with all their draft picks. Again, they added depth. They added to their defense as well. Again, adding a running back, I think, in the later rounds. I mean, you could do that because you're banking on Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. Those I think are kind of just. No offense to them, they might be just patches for the time being, because they've had their past injuries as well, so they're not going to be long-term answers there. And it's just funny how they have Greg Roman there, who was with the Ravens, and then you bring in 2 Ravens running backs in Dobbins and Gus Edwards. But I think the big takeaway from here is they did add wide receivers. They did do that, and you kind of figured they were going to do it one way or another. Now, most people thought they were going to end up doing that with their first pick, but that ended up not happening. But they addressed some needs, and again, they added to the defense as well. So you got to like what the Chargers have done. Could they be a wild card team? I think they possibly could, just because, again, you got Justin Herbert there. And now with Harbaugh in the fold, I think this team is going to give teams problems. They're going to be a respectable team. You got to see what the wide receivers are going to do. Can Quinn Johnston take a big leap in year 2? Because, the Chargers were expecting big things out of him last year. And when Mike Williams went down, he was taking on a bigger role. And also Joshua Palmer, he was banged up last year. So, yeah, Quinn Johnston was looked upon as maybe being that number 2 wide receiver. And he just did not live up to that. Now you go into this year, you're going to have more of a role, you would think. But, you got to take a bigger leap in year 2, hopefully. And, again, the Chargers, like I said, taking a trio of wide receivers, you add more depth to the position. And we'll see if they add some veteran. There's still some veteran wide receivers out there that they could target potentially, but they might be good for now. And again, you went out and you drafted arguably the best tackle in the draft, the best lineman in the draft, in Joe Alt to protect your franchise guy. So, I like what the Chargers did. Again, I would have liked if they would have kept Keenan Allen, but they had to move off of him. He wasn't willing to take the pay cut that they wanted him to, which I kind of don't blame him because, he's coming off of his best year. Why are you going to make him take even more of a pay cut? He's going to want to pay raise, so they had to do that. And I know there's been a lot of memes and things with Justin Herbert, saying he's throwing to nobody. But I think the Chargers will be okay. I'm not expecting them, to be a top team, but again, with Harbaugh, maybe they surprise some people and, they get into the playoffs, maybe, win a playoff game. I think that would be like my ceiling for them is they make the playoffs and maybe win at least one game. And I want to see Justin Herbert go out there and play well because I know a lot of people are criticizing him, not thinking he's that dude. But listen, he is super talented. And I think now that they have a head coach that, again, didn't win a Super Bowl, but has won a national championship and has been to a Super Bowl, has won NFC championship games before, or at least has been in a few. I think the Chargers are going to turn it around. And if not, then then I was wrong there. But you see what Harbaugh's able to do. He turned around the 49ers. He turned around Michigan. They won a national championship. So I'm led to believe that Harbaugh is going to do the same with the Chargers. Now, you're playing in the AFC West against the Kansas City Chiefs. So, and they're not going anywhere. Andy Reid's not going anywhere anytime soon. Patrick Mahomes is not going anywhere anytime soon. So that's going to be your biggest competition for years. And are you going to be able to knock them off and make your mark in that division? We'll see. I don't think it's going to be in 2024. I think this is a building block year, but again, there's no reason that the Chargers can't be competitive and, maybe be a team that gets into the playoffs with the wild card. I think they could do that. Because, again, with the quarterback, with the coach, I think they could do that. Now, again, when we get closer to the season starting and we make predictions and where teams will finish, that's when we'll go into more detail with where I think this team could potentially end up. But for right now, we're going to hold off on that because we got a long way to go before we get to that. Like once we get to August, then you'll start hearing me, bring up predictions and things like that. But for right now, we're not going to do that. We're going to stay away from that. I mean, listen, when the schedule comes out, maybe you'll see me go, they could win this game. They could win this game. We'll get into that. But, again, we're going to hold off on it. So, but let me know what you guys think on what the Chargers did. How do you guys think the Chargers did with their draft? Again, I mean, they addressed their needs. Added a couple guys on defense. Got a few wide receivers. Added a running back. Added a lineman. So I mean, they addressed their needs. So and some of these guys are going to need are more projects than going to be impactful starters right away. But I think I think the Chargers, like I said, they're heading in the right direction. And 2025, that could be the year where this team really takes off. They might be a year away, but I still, like I said before, I expect them to be competitive here. But I think 2025 is the year where they really, could take off. But again, there are still some free agents that are out there that they can maybe add a veteran wide receiver. I know teams, I think you'll see some of these top free agents now with the draft being over. You might see, depending on needs that teams still need, you might see teams now start, signing them. So, we'll keep an eye on all that. But with the Chargers, they, added more depth to their receiver room. And let's see how those guys do with Justin Herbert. So we're going to take our final break of the show. Again, let me know what you guys think about how the Chargers drafted. And then when we come back, we're going to discuss something Roger Goodell talked about, and that is his vision for an 18-game season. What he had to say on that, what could that mean? And that is what we will discuss when we come back from our final break of the show. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we're going to talk about Roger Goodell and a couple things he had to say on an 18-game schedule, potentially. Now, that's probably, no. That an 18-game schedule is already in play. What I meant to say was them subtracting a preseason game. So we'll get into that now. So, 18 weeks, and then you got the 17 games because you got the bye week. That's what I meant to say. I confused myself a little bit there. But anyways, I know because I'm like, wait, but they have 18 games. Well, 18 weeks, not 18 games. But yeah, so this is what he said. I think we're good at 17 right now. But listen, we're looking at how we can continue it. I'm not a fan of the preseason. The reality is I'd rather replace a preseason game with a regular season game any day. That's just picking quality. I mean, I think everybody's in agreement with that. He said if we get to 18-2, that's not an unreasonable thing. The other thing is Super Bowl Sunday ends up on President's Day weekend, which is a 3-day weekend, which makes it Sunday night, and then you have Monday off. And, I mean, this is something that people have been talking about for years. Why can't, people have off the next day after the Super Bowl just because of the event that it is? But we could be living in a reality where that is the case, and people have off the next day. Now, if this does get put into effect and there is another added game onto the schedule, that's great. I mean, back when I was, in elementary school and, middle school, high school, like if this happened back then, that would be great. But see, the sad reality for some people, including myself, is, well, probably still going to be working the next day. So it really is not going to matter to me. It'd be great for my parents, my aunts, my uncles, my grandparents, be great for them. But, for me and many others, it's not going to matter. You're still going to be working the next day. So, but this would be a great thing for a lot of people. I mean, my mom in years past has taken off, the day after the Super Bowl. Especially like when I don't think she went into work the next day when the Giants won. So, I mean, yeah, this would be a great thing. Again, but for the players, I don't know how crazy the players feel about this. Because, again, especially this year, you got games on Wednesday, Monday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I mean, Tuesday, again, the only day that doesn't have football. All you think about is injuries and how this game can be brutal at times. And the wear and tear on the players. Guys are playing hurt the whole year. Some guys. That's the one thing that you look at and you say, yeah, it's just, is it a good idea in that aspect? But then the NFL, they'll come out with their studies and say, oh well, by doing this has no effect on, injuries or, but this is also what he said. This is about, the game internationally. So he also said, I honestly think we'll be playing 16 games internationally. If you go 10 years out, I think we'll try to get to 8 or 9 in the next couple of years, he said. So that's another interesting thing, too, that I wanted to talk about. But the thing is with that is, as it's great that they're expanding the game and having games being played in other countries. But the other thing, too, is teams are losing home games because of that. Like the Eagles, they're going to be opening up in Brazil. That's an Eagles home game. They lose a home game. When teams are going to London and Germany, those are home. One of the teams, it's a home game for them, but so they're losing a home game there. That's the other issue when it comes to that. But I mean, the NFL is going to continue to do that, and again, I think it is great. But again, it doesn't come without its negatives, and that is a negative where a team is, you're going to go play in another country, but you're going to lose a home game because of it. So, but yeah, I mean, listen, I'm for the, extra game for there to be, you have off the next day. Move it to President's Day weekend, and then everybody has off the next day, or mostly everybody has off the next day. I think that's great. And I mean, listen, a lot of people are with Roger Goodell. Nobody's really a fan of the preseason. I know I'm not. I mean, I'll watch it because, for my team, and when the starters play like the first drive or two, yeah, you want to watch it, see, how they're progressing. See the dress rehearsal game before they, play the real thing. I know for the Giants last year, the first game of the regular season, yikes, 40-0. Didn't watch a single second of it, like I said. So, I got this. I think I watched the dress rehearsal, whatever game it was that they had their starters play. But yeah, for the regular season opener, yeah, I was not watching that game, and thankfully I didn't, because again it was 40-0. But yeah, with preseason, it's just, nobody really likes to watch. Well, I mean, people watch it, people gamble on it, which I don't understand. But that's again, who am I to say that? But yeah, I mean, it's getting shorter and shorter. Because it used to be 4 games, now it's 3. Before you know it, it's going to end up being 2. And then who knows? They might just do away with it entirely. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, it's guys trying to make the team, guys trying to make an impression. And as selfish as it is, a lot of football fans don't really care for that. They just want to get to the regular season. But for a lot of these guys, they're trying to make the team. But for most football fans, they're like, well, we want to get to week 1. We want to see our team play meaningful games. We don't really care for watching, these backup quarterbacks and these receivers that are trying to make the team. Although, listen, till this day, I'll stand by it. My mom and I knew that Victor Cruz was going to be good because we watched the preseason game against the Jets all those years ago when he had an amazing game. I forget how many. He had a touchdown in the game, but he had a great game, and we said this guy's going to be good. And then, didn't hear about him for a year, and then, he had that great season in 2011. The Giants won the Super Bowl. We knew. So we should be scouts. No. But yeah, no, but that was us watching a preseason game. And we were like, hey, this Victor Cruz guy is pretty good. And he turned out to be pretty good. Now, unfortunately, his career got cut short, and it hasn't played. I don't. Did he officially retire? Or I mean, now he's on TV, and he does a great job with that. But I don't remember. Did he officially announce his retirement? He probably did. It's just it was a while ago. But yeah, I mean he didn't play in an NFL game after 2016. Played with the Bears in the preseason in 2017, but yeah, didn't make the team. But yeah, it's just Victor Cruz was an exciting player to watch, and it just was unfortunate that his career got cut short. But yeah, again, that was us watching the preseason. We're like, hey, this guy could be good. But again, not really a fan of preseason myself either, just because, I mean, again, it's football. If it's on, I'll watch it. But, I mean, it's during the summer, so, I'm focusing on, the team behind me, the Yankees. So I'm not really interested in watching the preseason. Again, unless it's your team, your offense is playing, the first couple of drives. Yeah, you'll watch it, see how they do. But other than that, yeah, not really trying to watch it. So, but again, that's just me. So that's where it seems like we're going is, I mean, right now, Goodell says we're good, but there is a future where it could be an 18-game season. Not an 18-week season. That's why I got all confused. But an 18-game season, and that pushes the Super Bowl to President's Day weekend. Which, again, if I was still in school, I would be so excited about this. But I'm not anymore. So, most likely going to be working the next day regardless. Now, again, is that the worst thing in the world? No. It's fine. But, again, it really, really does hurt when you're like, man, if this would have just happened when I was still in school, could have enjoyed it. And I still very well can at some point in my life, but whenever this comes into effect. But, yeah, I don't, not in the immediate future. Not in the immediate future. So, but let me know what you guys think about this potential 18-game season that the NFL can move towards, where it does now. Again, not 18-week because that's already a thing, but 18-game, where that moves the Super Bowl to President's Day weekend. How do we feel about that? Because again, I'm for that. I know there's going to be players that aren't going to be happy about it, which I understand, and I want to side with their perspective too. Because again, I mean that's an extra game means more injuries. So that's a big negative. Is that so? But we'll see if the NFL does it. I mean, if Goodell's already putting it out there in the universe, it's probably going to end up happening at some point. So, but yeah, so that's pretty much it for the show for today. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. Nothing really. I kept checking the YouTube channels during the break. Show's still going, so we didn't have any internet problems today, which is nice. I was just hoping that's all I was thinking about over the weekend was, oh, I really hope this doesn't happen again. I hope this is just one of those days where the internet just was not good to me. But it was good. We didn't have any issues. So hopefully that continues, and once I wrap up here, I gotta try to figure out why my Google Chrome decided to log me out. So I gotta try to get back into that. Because I have all my bookmarks, for both YouTube channels where I have my show notes. I need to get back into that so I can. I mean, I'm still gonna be able to access it one way or another, but just annoying that decided to happen right before I got on. Because I was already nervous as it was with, I hope the internet's good, but then now I have this with Google signing me out of my account, and I can't get back in because of my password. So I'll have to figure it out, and hopefully it'll get situated. So, but again, just another problem that I was dealing with before getting onto the show, and I'm scrambling to get all the the show segments titled and all that, but again, it is what it is. So, but I hope you guys enjoyed the show today. Again, make sure to check out all the other shows as well. Get their perspectives on things regarding the draft, as well as other things going on, the NBA playoffs, the NHL playoffs, baseball, still going strong. Yankees had a great weekend, 30 runs in 2 days. Yeah, so maybe that'll silence the doubters a little bit, because and believe me, I was frustrated too with some of the games that they lost over the last week, but I got to keep reminding myself, and this goes for everybody with your teams. Now, baseball is different because it's 162 games. With football, if you lose a week like that, that could definitely come back to bite you towards the end of the year, because it's, again, only a 17-game season. But you just got to remind yourself, like, okay, just take it one game at a time. It's one game. It's a long season. This is with baseball. Let's see where they are towards the end of the year. So, patience. And listen, I'm not good when it comes to being patient. I'm very impatient. But when it comes to that, got to be patient. So, and again, 30 runs in 2 days, that's not bad. So, yeah. Again, make sure to check out the other shows, like I said. And, yeah, so that is all the time that we have for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow. Same time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And until then, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.